Later in the day, Duke Hugo stood by the window of his study, quietly watching Lucia and Damien in the garden below. His gaze lingered on the two as they talked, the boy visibly brightening under Lucia's gentle care. What are they doing? They seem quite close. He doesn't usually warm up to others this easily, the Duke thought, narrowing his eyes slightly. It's only been a few weeks, and she's already turned that wild pup into a housebroken one. He leaned against the frame, expression unreadable. Vivian has that strange ability, the kind that makes people naturally draw toward her. Even Jerome, his loyal butler, had fallen under her quiet spell, treating her with a warmth that surprised even Hugo. The garden party is tomorrow, he mused, brow furrowing. I wonder how that will go with Damien present. None of the nobles will believe the Duchess genuinely cares for a bastard child. Society isn't that kind. They'll whisper that she's playing some deeper game, but I'm sure Vivian knows that much already. The Duke's thoughts drifted further back, to the day he first heard of Damien's existence. He is Master Hugo's son, Sir Philip had told him. At the time, Hugo had scoffed. You're saying my brother fathered that child? Ha, that's nonsense, he had retorted, his eyes darkening. He knew well the peculiar curse, or blessing, of the Terran family. A legitimate son could only be born between two blood relatives. I know my brother, he'd thought bitterly. He'd never have done such a thing. He's the spawn of that dead scumbag, isn't he? Hugo demanded, glaring at Sir Philip. Didn't you know that Master Hugo had a lover? Came the calm reply. That had taken him aback. He remembered vaguely his brother once mentioning a woman he wished to marry. His jaw tightened. Did our father have something to do with this? He'd asked through gritted teeth. No, Philip said quietly. They fell in love without knowing who the other truly was. Young Master Damien is the result of that love. Love? Hugo spat. Don't be ridiculous. How could he not know he had a son? Master Hugo wasn't even aware of the pregnancy before his death, Philip explained. Hugo scoffed, crossing his arms. Did the old man know about it before he croaked? No. Serves him right. Probably rolling in his grave, Hugo muttered. He had asked then, were you the one who named him? I'm not worthy of such an honor, Philip had said. His mother named him. She was frail from childhood and often ill. The late Duke believed she couldn't bear a healthy child and ordered her disposed of. He died thinking she'd been long gone. Hugo had fallen silent at that, though not out of surprise. Of course that mad brute would do something like that, he thought grimly. So how did our half-sister survive, only to fall in love with Hugo and bear his son? Fate has strange ways, Your Grace, Philip replied. I can only assure you, no one interfered. Hugo turned his back then, dismissing the man, like I'd believe that. Damien's mother, Hugo's half-sister, had died giving birth. The Duke had no intention of taking the boy in and even made threats to drive Philip away, but the doctor left Damien behind and vanished without a trace. Enraged, Hugo made sure Philip could never get near the child again. Even when the man resurfaced years later, every attempt he made to see Damien ended the same way, stopped cold by the Duke's guards. Back then, Hugo's defiance was driven by spite, and though years had passed, he still didn't regret it. His world was the battlefield. He had no space for children or sentiment. He left Damien behind with hired governesses and went to war, returning 6 months later to find everyone in Rohan referring to Damien as his son. Hugo had never once confirmed it, but the world had chosen to believe, and he saw no reason to correct them. Now, in the quiet of the garden, Lucia knelt beside Damien, who sat nervously with a small fox cub in his lap. Damien, she said gently, have you decided on a name? The boy looked up, hesitant. Lucia, may I really name him? Of course, she smiled. I'm sure he'll be pleased if you do. The cub blinked at him, curious and alert. Damien leaned closer, thinking hard before murmuring, Asha. Lucia tilted her head. Asha? Why that name? Because I want him to grow strong and healthy. That's what the name means, he said, cheeks reddening. He couldn't bring himself to tell her how long he'd spent flipping through a dictionary for the perfect word. Asha, Lucia repeated softly, lifting the tiny fox in both hands. It's a good name. She offered the cub toward him. Since you named him, you should hold him. He'd like that. Damien hesitated, panic flickering in his eyes. Lucia? Come on, she teased lightly. I might drop him if you don't. Flustered, Damien carefully took the cub into his arms. The tiny creature squirmed, then settled against his chest. He felt its heartbeat, steady, alive. His own heart began to race. He's so small, but he's alive, Damien thought, his face flushed. I feel strange, he said quietly. Strange? Lucia asked, smiling softly. It's not bad, just my chest feels warm, tingly. That, Lucia said, leaning closer, is love and affection. Love? He repeated, puzzled. Yes, I'm sure your mother felt the same when she first held you. Sometimes your chest aches when you love something deeply, she said, her voice gentle. The cub yawned, pressing its tiny muzzle against Damien's shirt. The boy laughed, his earlier tension melting away. Lucia watched the scene, her expression softening. Damien's smile was pure, unguarded, a glimpse of a child who had known little kindness but was finally beginning to bloom under it. For a brief moment, the world around them stilled. The fading sunlight, the rustle of leaves, the quiet pulse of something tender and new. Lucia smiled faintly, her heart warming as she watched the young boy cradle the fox, unaware that he was, perhaps for the first time, learning what it meant to love and be loved in return. Duke Hugo watched Lucia and Damien from across the courtyard, his expression unreadable. I thought you were only going to watch the fox hunts, he said, stepping closer with a measured pace. His low voice caught both of their attention. Lucia turned to him with a small smile. That's what I was planning to do, but Lady Milton gifted me this fox. I just got him today. Hugo's eyes flicked to the small creature nestled in her arms. So now she's walking around with that thing like a pet, he thought grimly. She's been going out more often, growing close with Damien, and now there's this fox. I didn't think keeping Vian all to myself would be this difficult. Damien, Hugo called suddenly, his tone sharp. The boy stiffened. Huh? Yes, sir. Fox hunts are trivial. They're nothing like the real thing, the Duke said curtly. Return that fox to its rightful owner. Lucia's eyes widened. Trivial? He has no idea how fun it is, she fumed inwardly, though she kept her composure. Damien handed the fox back to her, hesitant but obedient. Come, Hugo ordered. Yes, sir, Damien replied, hurrying after him. Where are you going? Lucia asked, caught off guard. There's something I need to discuss with him, Hugo replied simply. Man to man. Lucia blinked, watching the two figures walk away together. Are they really leaving me here? After all my effort to bring them closer? Damien, you're ditching me for your father, just like that? She thought, biting her lip before sighing softly. Then, with a faint smile, she murmured to herself, Well, I'll gladly turn green with envy if it means those two are bonding. The Duke and Damien walked side by side in silence. Damn it, Hugo thought. I told him to follow me, but I don't even know what to say. We've never actually talked before. He cleared his throat. Is everything at the academy fine? Yes, Damien answered. Everything's fine. And you're still reading? Hugo asked, searching for something to say. I am. I enjoy it, so I read a lot, Damien said with quiet enthusiasm. Hugo studied him for a moment. Then an idea crossed his mind. Come, he said, leading the boy to his personal library. When they entered, Damien's eyes widened. The vast room was filled with towering shelves and the faint scent of old paper. Wow, Damien breathed, completely in awe. I've only ever allowed Vivian to enter this place, Hugo thought, watching the boy's wonder with faint satisfaction, but I'm glad to see that he likes it. Are there more books behind that door? Damien asked, pointing toward a locked door at the back. There's nothing of interest to you in that room. It's full of old junk, Hugo replied, his tone calm but final. Inwardly, he knew the truth. That room was the most restricted part of the Terran household, accessible only to its head. Behind those doors were the sealed records and buried secrets of the Terran bloodline. He'll never see what's in there, Hugo decided silently. That room will be burned to ashes before Damien ever takes my title. The secrets of this family will die with me. Go ahead, he said aloud. You can come here and read whenever you want. Damien's face lit up. Thank you, he said, darting off to explore the shelves. Hugo watched him quietly, his thoughts drifting. I made that decision a long time ago, to end the cycle that cursed this family. He remembered the day earlier when he had watched Lucia and Damien from a distance. So it was just a fox, he had thought at the time, almost relieved. Watching Lucia smile as she handed the creature to Damien, he had felt something unfamiliar stir within him. Naming a beast. How pointless, he had thought. But when Damien's small smile appeared, The Duke froze. It reminded him of someone. His brother. The brother who once promised to protect him, who had smiled the same way, warm, pure, untouched by the cruelty that ran through their bloodline. It's you, Hugo thought bitterly. I missed you so much, and here you are again, in this boy. Damien was the remnant his brother left behind, a shadow of gentleness that had survived in their family despite everything. Hugo had hated the boy for that, hated him for being a reminder of what he had lost. But now, watching him, that hatred softened. He's not a hindrance, Hugo thought. He's proof that the Terran name can still be redeemed. The cruelty that defined us ends with me. Damien will be different. The family will be reborn under his hand. A few days later, the long-awaited garden party arrived. Lucia stood in the sunlight, her calm smile bright against the hum of conversation and the rustle of silk gowns. Carriages rolled into the courtyard one after another, carrying the finest ladies of high society. The long table gleamed under the afternoon sun, perfectly set for the occasion. "Thank you for having us, Your Grace," one of the countesses said gracefully as she stepped forward. "Ah, welcome," Lucia replied with a kind smile. "I'm very glad you could come." The party began, laughter echoing through the garden like wind through leaves, the first true sign that the Terran household, once feared and shadowed by blood, was beginning to breathe a little easier. Faithful style. "Duchess?" Kate called out cheerfully, her voice carrying over the soft hum of conversation. Lucia turned, her expression brightening. "Lady Milton, welcome," she said warmly, the sincerity in her tone softening the formal greeting. "Thank you for inviting me. The weather is wonderful today," Kate replied, smiling. "I'm sure today's party will be a success." Lucia's eyes softened. "I see that Madame Michelle isn't with you." Kate's smile faltered. Yes, she truly wished to attend, but she's still unwell. Lucia's face dimmed with concern. "I should pay her a visit soon. I'm sure my great-aunt would appreciate that very much," Kate said kindly. Just then, a maid approached with a quiet bow. "Your Grace, the young master is waiting for you in the first-floor hall." "Oh, I'll be just a moment," Lucia said, turning politely to Kate. "Please, enjoy yourself. My maid will show you to your seat." "Yes, Your Grace," the maid replied. Lucia gave a gentle nod before excusing herself, her steps light and graceful as she left to fetch Damien. Kate followed the maid through the garden, but her cheerful expression had faded. "Lucia, I wonder if this will really be all right." She already knew Lucia planned to introduce Damien to everyone at today's gathering. It was a bold decision, one few women of their station would have dared to make. The ladies here, they won't be so accepting, Kate thought, watching their polished faces and glittering jewelry shimmer in the sunlight. Those born into nobility lived within walls of unspoken privilege. They were shielded, their lives planned from birth. Their marriages, their friendships, even their opinions, all dictated by the invisible hand of society. To them, the world beyond their comforts was irrelevant. They weren't cruel by intention, only blind by habit. Their arrogance came naturally, their pride an inheritance. Kate knew Lucia was aware of this, perhaps more than anyone. There was a quiet wisdom about her, a perception sharper than the rest. But knowing how people think and standing against it are two different things. And today, Lucia was choosing the latter. It's one thing to understand them, Kate mused, and another entirely to defy them. Among women, the topic of illegitimate heirs was especially sensitive. They saw such things as stains upon lineage, as blemishes upon the purity of their name. They'll whisper, Kate thought, her gaze passing over the gathered ladies, each with a fan in hand and polite smiles that hid barbed tongues. They'll question Lucia's judgment, her grace. Her eyes caught on a familiar figure, Countess Wales, a woman well known for her influence and vanity alike. Countess Wales, Kate thought, the ever-attentive participant of every social affair. Since her great-aunt had fallen ill, the Countess had taken it upon herself to fill that void in society's gatherings. Her presence loud where Kate's aunts had been graceful. Countess Wales and Kate's great-aunt had always been opposites, one content with quiet dignity, the other thriving on being seen and heard. The Countess delighted in reputation, in the subtle power of gossip and the sway of public opinion. When news spread that Lucia had taken Damien riding and introduced him to the other noblewomen, Countess Wales had not held her tongue. "The Duchess seems to be in need of prudent advice," she'd said to a group of listening ears. "It would be wise for her to have someone by her side who can guide her properly." Kate sighed inwardly at the memory. Let's hope she doesn't cause trouble today. Meanwhile, in his office, Duke Hugo sat at his desk surrounded by papers, his posture calm but his tone quietly alert. "Is the party running smoothly?" he asked without looking up. "Yes, Your Grace," Jerome replied. "Almost all the guests have arrived." "Anyone missing?" "Two have sent word they can't attend due to illness, and another two are running a little late. Otherwise, all are present." "Good," Hugo murmured. Jerome hesitated, watching him from the side. "I know she'll be fine," he thought nervously, "but bringing the young master to such an event, I can't help but worry." As he shuffled his notes, Hugo suddenly asked, "Jerome, does the name Lucia mean anything to you?" Jerome froze. "Yes, Your Grace," he answered cautiously. There was a brief silence. "Who did you hear it from?" Hugo asked, his tone low, measured, but there was a sharp edge beneath it. Jerome swallowed hard. "Did I say something wrong?" Well, I overheard Lady Milton call her Grace by that name, and I asked her Grace about it myself." Hugo's expression darkened, though he said nothing at first. "So, it was her childhood name?" he asked quietly. "Yes, Your Grace." A long pause filled the room. "All right," the Duke said finally, voice calm but distant. "You may go." Jerome bowed quickly. "Yes, Your Grace." He exited in a hurry, his heart pounding. He didn't know, oh heavens, he really didn't know. When the door closed, Hugo leaned back in his chair, his thoughts a storm behind his steady gaze. That Milton girl knows. Damien knows. Even Jerome knows. And yet, I didn't. His memory flashed to that moment. Damien calling her by that name, Lucia. He hadn't thought much of it then, but now it lingered in his chest like a quiet ache. So she still keeps that lock on her heart, he thought bitterly. Still as tightly shut as ever. He let out a quiet breath, eyes lowering to his desk. After my brother died, the world lost its color. Days bled into one another, lifeless and gray. I thought that emptiness would never end, until her. He remembered how life returned to him through her laughter, how her calm presence filled the silence in his soul. If not for her, I would still be miserable. My world would still be dark. If I ever lost her, that darkness would swallow me whole again. He closed his eyes briefly. So long as she's my wife, she'll stay by my side. But being my wife doesn't mean she loves me. No law, no vow can bind the heart. He clenched his hands slowly, the thought twisting deep within him. I could bear her heart belonging to no one. But if she were to love another, if she were to give me only her body while her heart wandered elsewhere, then my life would descend once again into that same pitch-black void. Downstairs, Lucia stood in the hall and her maid appeared once more. "Your Grace, the young master is waiting here," the maid said gently. Lucia turned and her eyes softened immediately. "Oh my," she breathed, a smile forming as she brought her hand to her lips. There stood Damien, neatly dressed in a tailored suit, his posture slightly nervous but proud. For a moment, Lucia simply looked at him, her heart swelling. "All right," she said softly. "Let's go greet our guests." "Don't you look dapper?" Lucia exclaimed warmly, her eyes softening as she admired Damien's neatly dressed form. The boy looked composed, though a hint of unease flickered behind his expression. He looks even more like Hugh, and he's so cute, she thought quietly, her heart light with affection. "It's a little snug," Damien muttered, tugging lightly at the collar around his neck. "I know it feels uncomfortable now, but you'll get used to it soon," she reassured him with a gentle smile. "All the guests have arrived. Come on, let's go." As Lucia turned to lead the way, she noticed Damien hadn't moved. He stood still, hesitating. "Damien?" she called softly. "Lucia? I keep thinking about it, and He clenched his fists, his words faltering. "Damien," she interrupted gently but firmly, "there will be many times in your life when you'll have to stand before others. Today may be your first, but it won't be your last. There's no need to be nervous." Her tone softened as she met his gaze. "And besides, I'll be there for you. If anyone dares to offend you, they'll have to go through me first." Her calm assurance startled him. Damien blinked, the weight of her words slowly settling in. His cheeks flushed, and his heart thudded awkwardly. "You don't believe me?" Lucia asked, raising a brow with playful suspicion. "That's not what I was thinking," he murmured, almost too quietly. "Then we'll tell your father," she said, a teasing glint in her eyes. He's quite intimidating, so no one would dare mistreat you." That drew a shy smile from Damien. Lucia reached out, taking his small hand in hers, her touch warm and steady. "Let's go," she said again, looking back at his flustered face. I don't know why, Damien thought, but at that moment it felt like she was glowing. She shone so beautifully, I couldn't look away. Meanwhile, back in the Duke's office, Hugo sat behind his desk as his aide, Ashen, entered hurriedly. "Your Grace, there's an urgent report, a rapidly spreading plague," Ashen said grimly. "A plague?" Hugo repeated, his brow furrowing. "Yes, dozens of Northerners have fallen ill with the same symptoms. The district is on the outskirts of Roham, about 3 or 4 hours by horseback. They sent word immediately without waiting to observe the situation." Hugo rose sharply, his expression grave. "That's far too close. If it truly is contagious, it could reach Roham in days." He straightened his coat, already shifting into command. "We leave immediately. Ready the knights. Bring a doctor who can ride." "Yes, Your Grace," Ashen replied. "I heard Sir Philip is in town. Should I arrange for him to accompany you?" At that name, Hugo's eyes narrowed. He turned sharply toward Ashen, his voice cold and cutting. "No, find someone else." Ashen bowed quickly. "Yes, Your Grace." In the garden, sunlight spilled over tables decorated with soft linens and spring flowers. Lucia stood at the front, addressing the assembled guests. "I am greatly honored by everyone's attendance today," she began with a smile, her voice poised and clear. "Thank you for taking the time to join me. This is my first time hosting such a large gathering, so I ask your understanding if some things aren't perfect. I only hope that you all enjoy yourselves." Her sincerity drew polite applause. Lady Kate Milton, standing among the crowd, watched her friend with quiet admiration. Lucia has only ever hosted small, intimate parties before, she thought. But today she's holding a full garden ball. This is her biggest step yet. The crowd was diverse. Old families, young debutantes, noble houses of varying ranks, even vassal families of the Terran Duchy. Lucia had made sure to invite a mix of guests, preferring inclusivity over repetition. Her approach was unusual. Some appreciated her humility and openness, while others whispered that her small gatherings lacked grandeur. As the murmurs settled, Lucia smiled once more. "Since everyone is here, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce someone very special." She turned slightly. "Damien, come here, please." The guests exchanged puzzled looks as Damien stepped forward. The boy looked composed beside her, though his hands were clenched slightly at his sides. "I'm sure most of you already know," Lucia continued, "but I would like to formally introduce Damien. He will be the next head of the Terran family." A ripple of surprise passed through the crowd. Fans stilled mid-wave, teacups froze halfway to lips. "Oh dear, what on earth?" a lady whispered. "Goodness," another murmured, eyes narrowing. Then the sharp clatter of porcelain broke the air. Countess Wales had dropped her teacup. All eyes turned toward her. Lucia blinked, confused. "Countess Wales, is something the matter?" The Countess straightened, her expression tight. "I was under the impression that today's gathering was for the ladies, Your Grace. It's like bringing a child, especially a boy, hardly seems appropriate." Lucia's expression didn't falter. "He may be a boy, yes, but this isn't the first time such introductions have taken place, especially in the capital." A thin silence stretched across the garden. I knew I had to say something that would strike her pride, Lucia thought quietly. The North's society can't compare to the capital's. She may boast of her influence here, but beyond this region, she's nothing. Her eyes hardened, her tone even. "This is a warning. Stop now before you embarrass yourself further." Countess Wales bit the inside of her cheek, her hand trembling slightly. How dare she? The air in the garden grew thick with unspoken tension, as all eyes flickered between the Duchess and the Countess, two women standing at the quiet center of a social storm. "I suppose there's nothing more I can say," Countess Wales said with a frown, her voice low but sharp enough to slice through the air around her. Her lips curled faintly as she looked away, her thoughts simmering behind her calm facade. "Humph. I was right about her," she mused bitterly. "It's all just an act. She's not the gentle and sweet Duchess she pretends to be, and she says she has no interest in the North's social scene? What an absurd lie." Her gaze flicked toward the Duchess, standing elegantly among the guests, and her eyes narrowed. You'd have to be ignorant to think people would bend to your word just because you're the Duchess. If there's any part of society where neither rank nor title holds sway, it's within the inner circles of high society itself. Even the Queen's influence had its limits when it came to those gatherings, and everyone knew it. So how could a Duchess possibly control the North just because of her position? Countess Wales thought with quiet disdain. Rumors had a way of growing wings in the capital, and the Duchess of Terran had no shortage of them. Countess Wales had heard them all, some absurd, some convincing, and a few that rang with unsettling truth. The Duchess is only one of the king's many daughters, she reflected. She has no real family, no connections worth mentioning. Her marriage to the Duke always seemed questionable. I heard from a reliable source that it was nothing more than a political exchange between the king and the Duke, a deal sealed out of necessity, not affection. Her eyes hardened, her thoughts growing colder. The Duke has never been known for contentment with just one woman. As for the Duchess' supposed beauty, that was just another embellishment crafted to stir envy. There's no way that marriage is as harmonious as they appear to make it. Duchess, if you want to keep that title, you'd better learn to choose your allies wisely. That old woman won't do you any good. Despite her internal sneer, Countess Wales maintained a serene smile. Her posture was flawless, her expression unreadable. I have far more power and influence than that woman, she thought, yet everyone looks to Countess Corzin as though she were a saint, calling her godmother and whispering her name like some talisman of favor. When the Duchess had first requested to learn from Countess Corzin, it had caused quite a stir. The lessons, according to gossip, were nothing more than polite instructions on how to manage household affairs and maintain grace as a wife. Pitiful tips for married life at best, Countess Wales thought disdainfully. And yet, the Duchess took them so earnestly. Today's garden party had been the Countess's chance to make an impression, a subtle challenge presented beneath layers of etiquette and politeness. And the Duchess herself provided me with the perfect opportunity, she thought, her composure tightening into a quiet smile as she raised her teacup. Around her, the tension that had built moments ago began to settle, the chatter slowly resuming. Oh, wow! The tea tastes wonderful. I wonder how Her Grace came by such high-quality leaves? A young lady exclaimed, eager to ease the silence. Right? I couldn't agree more, her neighbor replied, though her voice faltered as another lady beside them abruptly cut in, silencing the brief attempt at conversation. The atmosphere was oddly quiet, uncomfortably so. The garden was filled with the scent of fresh flowers and delicate pastries, but the air felt heavy, stifling. The guests sat in silence, perfectly composed, like lifelike dolls placed in a tableau. Except for one person, Kate Milton. Kate sat with bright eyes, nibbling her cookies and sipping her tea with genuine delight, seemingly oblivious to the tension suffocating the group. "Oh, it's so delicious!" she said cheerfully, breaking the silence that hung over the table. "Lady Lena, didn't you say last week that you liked Mont Blanc?" she asked with a smile. But Lady Lena gave no reply, just a tight smile and downcast eyes. Confused, Kate turned to another woman. "Baroness, about that dress you mentioned last time." Again, no answer. The Baroness lowered her gaze, pretending not to hear. Kate's cheerful expression faltered, replaced by confusion and irritation. She set her cup down and frowned. This isn't good. Her mind clicked quickly through what she knew of such situations. They're trying to ruin this party. It was a tactic well known among noblewomen, a form of social warfare called party wrecking. It was an unspoken battle, fought not with words or weapons, but with silence. When a host lost favor, or when a guest sought to challenge authority, those attending would collectively refuse to speak. The entire gathering would grow cold, unmoving, until the host relented or the problem was resolved. If one began the act, others were expected to follow. To speak up against it, unless one had equal standing, was to invite social death. Kate clenched her dress under the table. This would never have happened if my great-aunt were here. Countess Corzin, her great-aunt, commanded enough respect to overturn such games. But Kate, despite her family name, was too young to break this silence herself. Countess Wales started this, she realized, her jaw tightening, and she used the pretext of this being a women's-only event. Damien's presence gave her the excuse she needed. Damien, the Duke's heir, was still a boy, but that didn't matter. The Countess had twisted his attendance into an impropriety. No one dared to oppose her openly, but everyone knew this wasn't about propriety, it was about control. Party wrecking is a war between women, Kate thought bitterly. No bloodshed, no shouts. But it's crueler than any battle. She bit into her cookie loudly, the only noise in that stifled space. If I can't fight with words, then I'll at least refuse to play along, she thought stubbornly. Meanwhile, Lucia, quietly observing from her seat, understood what was happening all too well. So this is how party wrecking works, she thought. I've seen this in my dreams. The way noblewomen turn silence into a weapon. This type of sabotage only succeeded under certain conditions. It had to be an all-female gathering, with enough guests to give the act weight. And the host, no matter her status, would often be forced to yield for the sake of appearances. The usual outcome is always the same, Lucia reflected. Both sides put on false smiles, exchange pleasantries, and pretend to reconcile. The host steps down first, swallowing her pride to keep the party from collapsing. She exhaled slowly. The simplest solution would be to send Damien away, to appease them. But her expression hardened. No, I refuse to bend. She rose from her seat, her voice calm yet carrying enough authority to slice through the silence. I'm sorry to say this, she began, meeting the eyes of every woman present, but I won't be able to enjoy this gathering with all of you. Therefore, she paused, her tone unwavering, today's festivity will come to an end here. The garden fell utterly still. Teacups stopped midway to lips, fans lowered. Even Countess Wales's expression faltered for a heartbeat. Lucia's words echoed quietly through the air, leaving the weight of her decision to linger like a storm about to break.
Thank you for watching this episode of our Manhwa Recap. We hope you enjoyed diving into the world of this story with us. If you loved the content, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more amazing manhwa recaps. See you in the next episode.